If a grave whispers your name before midnight, do not answer. Because in Hollow Vale Cemetery, the dead do not call for help. They call to be remembered. The first time I heard it, I thought it was the wind. Then the voice said my full name, the one only my mother used when she was angry. I froze at the iron gate, staring at the fog rolling between the graves like something alive. Above me hung a blue moon, too bright, too close, like a watching eye. Then my phone lit up. One new voicemail. From my sister. My sister Mara had been buried for 3 months. I pressed play. Her voice came through in a broken whisper. Eli, do not let the moon see the last grave. Then the line went dead. A sound answered from inside the cemetery. Scratch. Slow. Vet. Like someone dragging their fingers up through fresh soil. I should have run. Instead, I looked toward the center of the graveyard, where one cross had no name, no date, just a single word carved into the stone. Open. I had not come to Hollow Vale by accident. A black envelope had arrived that morning, slipped under my door with no stamp, no return address. Inside was a single sentence. Come alone at midnight. Your sister is not resting.
No signature.
No threat. Just a small silver key and a map of the cemetery. The map had one path circled in red ink, leading straight to the nameless grave. I had never heard of that section before, but the paper said something worse than a lie. It said the cemetery was older than the town, older than the church, older than the first record of death in the county. At the gate, a rusted plaque hung from one chain. 3 rules were carved into it. Do not speak your name after moonrise. Do not follow the fog when it forms a face. Do not open a grave that opens for you. I laughed once, softly, because fear does that to you. It makes you pretend. Then the wind turned, and every cross in the cemetery tilted toward me, as if the dead themselves had heard my voice. The fog parted as I walked in. The path was lined with broken angels, leaning stones, and dead trees twisted like hands in prayer. Every few steps, I saw tiny lights drifting near the ground. Fireflies, I thought, until one rose high enough to show me it was not light at all.
It was a pale eye.
Watching me, I kept moving. That was when I saw the first impossible thing. A grave had been dug open from the inside. The soil around it was black and wet, like it had just been breathed on. A skeletal hand stuck out from the earth, fingers bent upward, as if it were trying to point. I stumbled back. The hand moved, just once. A warning, or an invitation. Then I saw the name on the stone beside it.
Ellie Con.
My own name. My throat closed. I had never seen that grave before. The dates below the name were worse. Born, 1998. Died, tomorrow. And behind me, from somewhere deep in the fog, Mara's voice whispered again. Now you understand. I turned and ran until I found the old chapel at the edge of the cemetery. Its doors were chained shut, but the silver key fit the lock perfectly. Inside, the air smelled like dust, candles, and rain that had never touched the ground. A single lantern burned on the altar. Under it sat a notebook bound in black cloth. On the first page, in tight, trembling handwriting, were the words, "The cemetery does not bury bodies. It buries the parts of you that cannot survive the truth." I kept reading. The book belonged to the last gravekeeper, a man named Jonas Vale, who wrote that every 27 years the blue moon opened a seam between the dead and the living. Not to return the dead, to trade them. For every person who disappeared in Hollow Vale, something else came back wearing their face. Not a ghost, not a monster, a missing piece, a stolen ending. The graveyard was a machine made of grief. And the last sentence in the notebook made my blood go cold. If you find your own grave, it means the cemetery remembers you better than you remember yourself. I slammed the notebook shut, but the chapel had gone silent in a way that made silence feel crowded. Then I heard footsteps outside, slow, measured, circling the building. I moved to the broken window and looked out. A figure stood in the fog between 2 headstones. Tall, still, too thin to be human. Its face was hidden, but one hand hung at its side. A hand made of bone. The same hand I had seen rising from the grave. It lifted one finger and pointed toward the churchyard.
Then it pointed at me.
I stumbled backward, and the lantern flickered. When the light steadied, the figure was gone. In its place stood an open grave.
Fresh.
Waiting. I heard Mara again, closer this time.
Eli, listen Tombstone.
They did not bury me. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. What do you mean? I whispered into the dark. Her voice came from under the floorboards. They buried the memory of me. The chapel bell rang once, then twice, and from the cemetery outside came 100 answering knocks, as if every coffin in Hollow Vale had just remembered how to wake up. I followed the sound beneath the chapel. A trapdoor hidden under the altar led to a narrow stairwell going down into raw earth. The walls were lined with names, thousands of them, some carved cleanly, some scratched in panic, some crossed out so violently the stone had split. At the bottom was a chamber no human hand should have built. In the center stood a ring of grave markers arranged like teeth around a pit of black soil. And above it all, suspended in the stone ceiling, was a half-buried sphere glowing blue. The moon. Not the real moon. Something copied from it. Something trapped. A recording. A witness. Then I saw the journal on a pedestal. The final page was written in my sister's handwriting. Eli, if you are reading this, then the truth has already begun to wake. There was no funeral. There was a replacement. You were the one they erased. The room tilted. My memories cracked open like thin ice. A fire. A scream. My mother throwing me through a doorway. Men in black coats, chanting under moonlight. And Mara, little Mara, crying because I kept calling for a name I could no longer remember. Not my name. The thing that had been buried was not my sister. It was the version of me that died first. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say the journal was lying. Then the earth behind me moved. The skeletal hand rose again from the pit, higher this time, dragging a body up with it. Not a corpse.
A boy.
13 years old. My face. My eyes. My mouth opening in a silent scream. He looked at me with the terror of someone who had been trapped underground for a lifetime. Then I understood. The cemetery did not just bury memories. It split souls. It kept one version above ground and fed the other to the dark. I was not the original Eli Carter. I was the one the graveyard had left behind, so the town could keep living without guilt. A copy. A witness. A son shaped from regret. And Mara had come back only because the true me, the buried me, had begun to wake. The blue sphere overhead cracked. Light spilled through the chamber. Every grave in Hollow Vale opened at once. Not bodies. Voices. Names. All the people the town had forgotten were rising through the fog, trying to remember who had stolen them. The thing in the pit reached for me. My buried self reached too. 2 hands. One choice. If I climbed out, the cemetery would finish splitting the town apart. If I went down, the graves would close. Mara's voice came one last time, soft and broken. Eli, do not let them make another you. So, I stepped into the pit. The cold hit me like drowning. The blue light swallowed my face. And as the earth closed above me, I heard the town scream. Not in pain, in recognition. Because every person in Hollow Vale finally remembered the same truth. The graveyard had never been beneath the town. The town had been built on top of a buried lie. The next morning, the chapel was gone. The cemetery was gone. Only the open field remained, wet with fog and moonlight. But sometimes, if you stand there after midnight, you can still hear a hand scratching under the soil. And if it whispers your name, do not answer. It is not calling you to die. It is checking whether you were ever real.